Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
All right, so we're looking at your screen.
Hello.
Yes, good afternoon. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm fine. And yourself?
Oh, I can't complain.
I'm still at work, so I may not have my video on all the time.
Okay, I understand. I understand.
Hello, hello, everyone, and good evening. Good evening. I know it is a beautiful day outside, so I appreciate everyone that is attending this evening. I went outside to walk the dog a little while ago, and it was a beautiful day out. So I appreciate everyone for attending. So we're gonna give everyone. We're gonna just wait another 5 more minutes to get some of the folks that are coming in, and then we will start. Darnell. Good, good. So we'll start in about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, hello, everyone. I think, so we're at 5 minutes after. I will say that we can get started. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Like I mentioned before, I know it's a nice and beautiful sunny day outside. So I thank everyone for attending. All right, so I'm gonna be doing both. So I'm gonna be running the back end of things. So I'm gonna be admitting people, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask those questions. Just a couple housekeeping rules as we get started. If you are a licensed real estate agent or broker and you are seeking continuing education credit, please make sure that you leave your real estate license number and the way your name shows on your license. Make sure you leave it in the private chat. You can send it directly to me. That's what we're going to need so you can get continuing education credit. And what's going to happen, this is going to be a two-day workshop. So we have today, we have Darnell Joseph, and then tomorrow we'll have Jackie Gathers as well. So this would be 2 days. Each day will give you 2 hours, so you'll have a total of 4 hours continuing education credit. For the most part, please leave yourselves on mute. If you have any questions or anything like that, we'll definitely take questions. So we can do that. This will be more of a conversation piece. So myself and Darnell, again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask, put it in the chat, and we'll stop and we'll answer questions. But we're going to be going over principles of property management, right? We all know that property management is a huge piece of a real estate transaction after the real estate transaction. So we're going to be going over that. And we have Darnell Joseph, who is our guest for the day. So he'll be along with us for the full 2 hours, right, Darnell? Perfect, perfect. So those are the housekeeping rules. Again, if you are a licensed real estate agent, please make sure that you give me your license number and you give me your name as it appears on your ID so you can get continuing education credit for it. What'll happen after the class is over, after both classes are over, the school, and I'll make sure that they email you your continuing education certificate so you can have that towards your continuing education credit, all right? So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat. And like I said, I'm going to be here, and I'm also going to be, Carolyn, you can send it to them. You can do both. You can send it to me though, since we're on right now, you can send it to me and I'll make sure that it gets to the place that it needs to be. And I think you all have my email address, but if you don't, I will give you my contact information. So if anything happens, you can also reach out to me and call me or email me directly, all right? So those are just a couple housekeeping items. Again, please keep yourselves on mute if you can, and let's have a good time. So what I'm gonna do is this, just to make sure that everybody is awake and no one's snoring. I'm going to ask for your real estate license 2 different times. We're going to break at 6 or 6:10ish. Then I'm also going to ask for it maybe midway through that, just to make sure everybody's still awake and no one's snoring, or you don't have your pet dog sitting on the call and not you. So going to make sure of that, all right? Perfect. All right. And thank you, Teresa, for that. So with that being said, we'll get started. So I'll just have a brief introduction. Those were the housekeeping rules. Again, my name is Tywin Anthony. I will be your instructor for this class. And we also have Darnell Joseph. So I want him to introduce himself, what he does, and hopefully we can have a great conversation. So Darnell, I will let you introduce yourself. Thank you for being here this evening. And looking forward to it. So if you can have a brief introduction of yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, my name is Darnell Joseph. I am a property manager, a property owner, real estate agent, real estate investor, restaurant owner, and also a 3D marketing owner as well. I've been in the property management field for over the last 15 years. My family's been doing it since the 80s. I pretty much grew up in it. And I tried different ways of doing property management over the last, I would say, since I could walk. I've been involved in different things and different deals and just overseeing, multiple units across Brooklyn, Pennsylvania, Georgia. the height of everything, I was a part of overseeing almost 600 units across Brooklyn. And yeah, I mean, I'm also involved in a restaurant. I'm also involved in 3D walkthroughs, which we'll get into today, which also helps in property management and renovation, as well as being a licensed real estate agent. Hold on, my thing's shaking. I mean, but we can start it off. Tywin, when you're ready.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. All right. Can you hear me?
Yep. Okay.
Perfect, perfect. All right, so I'm going to get my PowerPoint going on here. All right, so can everyone see can you see my PowerPoint, Darnell?
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. So to kick things off, and again, and what I'll do again for everyone, because as I'm here, I can't really see the chat. So as Darnell speaks or as we break a little bit, I'll check the chat, but please make sure that you're putting your real estate license and numbers and names there, and I'll answer the chat. And I'll make sure to answer any questions before we leave anyway, all right? So welcome to Property Management Principles. This is a course being brought to you by Enoch Foliage LLC Realty School. So for anyone that is looking to either get their real estate license, they have a 75-hour licensing course here at the school as well, all right? So I'll just introduce myself and who I am and what I do. So I do a lot, as you can see. Currently, I am a commercial property manager with a firm called RPAI, which stands for Retail Properties of America. And what I do, I manage open air shopping centers. So most of our shopping centers are anchored by groceries, Stop and Shop, ShopRite, Kroger's, King Cullen, so on and so forth. Currently, right now, in my portfolio, I have about 8 to 10 assets, all open air shopping centers located throughout Long Island, upstate New York, and also near Boston. In addition to that, sorry about that. In addition to that, I have a small nonprofit called the New York Crusaders. And what we do great work in the community. We have 3 different components. We have an adult football component, and we do a lot of economic development stuff. I also am an adjunct instructor at Baruch. Whenever I can, there, going on to Senrock is where I worked at before, worked at Shinda. And those acronyms on the bottom, and we'll get into some of those where it says RAM and CPM and some of those things. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. And I'm also a member of my community board, Community Board 3, which is in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So I was born and raised in Bed-Stuy, been on the community board for almost 8 years. Actually, funny story, that's how I met Darnell. You know, Darnell and I met through the community board. Darnell has, I'm gonna say, I don't wanna say probably, I'm gonna say is a good, strong chance, probably my favorite restaurant in Bed-Stuy. It's called For Purpose, and Darnell, I'm there a lot, probably every Saturday, or whether you see me or not, I'm there almost every weekend getting some coconut shrimp and a pina colada there. So one of my favorite establishments, if you guys have not been to For Purpose, they're located on Fulton Street. Please check them out. They have a great environment, great atmosphere, and great food as well, right?
Thank you.
I should be letting you send the plug for your establishment, but I know well because I'm there often. So, all right, so we'll move on. All right, so we're going to get into some general terms. Why is real estate important in our society, right? And we're going to just kind of go through some of these preliminary stuffs before we jump into the real heavy stuff in property management, which is going to be the icing on the cake, so to speak. Quick question: can all of you see the PowerPoint right now? Darnell, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so real estate is important because it serves so many purposes in our lives. You have personal residence, place of business, schools, government buildings, and something that is lucrative for a lot of people is investment and making money. So a lot of people will use real estate as an investment. Most of you, I assume, are in real estate in some shape, form, or fashion, whether you're a property manager, whether you're a real estate agent or broker, whether you're an investor yourself. Investment in real estate, and honestly, no matter where you are, is always a good thing. And I'll tell you a quick story about how I got involved in real estate. So, and it's just funny. So when I was in college is when I really got involved in real estate. I'm pretty sure Darnell has a similar story, and you can tell us how you got involved in real estate. But I played college football, and one day at practice, this was in the Midwest, a friend of mine said, "Hey, my family came to town and they bought some property. So I said, wow, all right, you bought property. And more specifically, I was in the state of Kansas. So I'll tell you that. It's in the state of Kansas. So the next day, I went down to the county clerk's office and I asked them, how do you buy property? And mind you, at that time, I'm a young guy, from Brooklyn, New York, out in the Midwest playing football. And the lady looked at me and she said, okay, great. She gave me this big book. This book was about this thick. And I looked through the book, not knowing what it was. And I said, well, what is this? And she said, these are all the people who have not paid their property taxes for the last 2 to 3 years. I said, oh, this was a while ago. So unfortunately, we didn't have, I'm not going to tell my age, but we didn't have the nice smartphones that we have right now. So I had to take one of the big handheld cameras. And what I did for the next 2 months is I went around to almost every property that was on the list. And I either took a picture and I recorded it because I knew within the next couple months, they would have something called an auction. So sure enough, those 2 months went by and I went to the auction. And mind you, I'm in my young 20s. I didn't have that much money. I had maybe about $4,000 to $5,000. And I went to the auction, and make a long story short, when that auction ended, I ended up with 3 single family home properties for $5,000 or less. Now, the interesting thing about Kansas, in every county, in every state has a different type of law. But Kansas was a tax deed county, meaning that once you pay the property taxes, you are entitled to ownership of that property. All right. 1 second. Let me make sure I don't have to admit anybody else in. All right. Perfect. Then we're good to go. All right. So after that auction, I actually owned those 3 properties. And from there, that is when I understood and knew that I wanted to dive deeper into real estate. And even now, every now and again, and while the market's become a little bit more tough when it comes to tax deed and tax liens, I still go back to that county every now and again to engage in some of those real estate practices. So I've heard of people being engaged in real estate in so many different ways. And I love hearing stories about how different people have been engaged in real estate in so many ways. So that's how I got in real estate. Darnell, what about you?
How do I? So like I said, my family's been involved with real estate since the 80s. Grandfather came from Grenada, came up and decided it was more of a way of having family together, buying buildings, because at that time buildings were only about $80,000, $40,000, but that's a lot back then.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much grew up in it, living in an apartment building, and one of my family members in apartment buildings. And then when I got into high school, one of my cousins were just like, hey, you want a job this summer? And I was like, yeah, why not? So I worked for her, her family, and they had about 9 or 10 buildings, ranging from about 600 units or more. And I used to do paperwork. I did paperwork for about 2 years in between high school and college. And then it came to a point where I had to get thrown in the field. So I did that from every time I went back for my college summers. I would go to Queensborough College, and then I'll go to Queens College to do classes, and then I'll do real estate in the mornings, and then in the afternoons I'll be doing a night school. At the time I was attending Penn State, doing a security and risk analysis degree.
Okay.
I did that for 4 years, and did that, and then I did property management after. I got my real estate license about 6 or 7 years ago because a family friend of mine was just like, hey, you already do it for your family, you might as well do it for other people and buy and sell and be a part of managing other people's property as a possibility. So getting my license was more of a I was already doing it, I understand the business. I may not understand all the laws and all the regulations, but I have a good gist on the whole entire thing, from ownership side to actually working for someone. I pretty much was my cousin that kind of threw me into it, and I enjoyed it. It was very interesting. There's good and bad parts of ownership as well as managing properties. I think the only part that I did not like is the eviction part. I did not enjoy that at all. It kind of didn't make any sense to me in high school that people didn't pay It wasn't a thing, especially when I went out to school in Pennsylvania, and that wasn't a thing. Like kids did not pay their rent. Like that wasn't a thing at all. I actually went back to Pennsylvania and bought a couple properties out there, did Airbnb and a couple things like that. But it just wasn't. It still isn't a thing. Like people not paying their rent is not a thing. Even when you take somebody to court, the judge kind of looks at you and say, well, were they living in okay conditions and all this other stuff? And the judge is reasonable compared to how they are in New York. But that was my eye opener for my cousin getting me involved, and I kind of ran with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And again, there are so many different stories of how people can get involved in real estate. So thank you for that. All right, so going, as we mentioned, so there are various types of real estate, various types of assets. You have commercial, you have residential, you have mixed use buildings, you have industrial. You have shopping centers, which is what I manage, and we all know that the dynamics right now, the dynamics of real estate, I believe, are changing greatly, right? Because we're in a shift. So not only had I believe, especially for commercial real estate, that we were already in a shift anyway, right? With Amazon and just online shopping and some of these larger scale commercial properties becoming obsolete, like Toys R Us. I used to love to go to Toys R Us when I was young, right? I used to live to go to Toys R Us and run around the store and play with toys. Right now, the dynamics of how we interact with real estate is definitely changing. So the various types of real estate will determine how we engage, with one another also, right? So something that's important, right? We have the real estate economy, which is very important, right? And in the economy, you have certain factors. And while there are so many factors that contribute to how real estate fluctuates, here are four main factors of kind of looking at what happens. So we have hiring. Who's hiring? So you can see in the top left-hand corner, jobs are very, very, very important to the real estate market, right? And we know that and we see that. When COVID, at the onset of COVID, there were so many people that I knew, and I'm talking about top level executives that were furloughed. They didn't have jobs or they were outright fired. The bottom line is most people are not independent contractors. Real estate agents are independent contractors, right? But most people have a regular 9 to 5 where they punch the clock and they get a regular paycheck. So when that shifts in our economy and those jobs start to dry up, that means there are less and less people that are buying new homes, less and less people that are able to refinance. So that is a huge market factor, and that is a huge market indicator, because if Joe has a family of 4 and Joe is the only one that's the breadwinner in his family and Joe doesn't have a job, that means Joe has a mortgage, that means he will not be able to pay his mortgage. And then the trickle effect starts to, it's a downward spiral. Then the banks, they start to tighten up their lending requirements and so on and so forth. So the job market is always a huge indicator. And for me, I always look at what's happening in the job market. If you want, CNBC I want to say maybe every 2 days, or maybe every 3 days, they come out with the job market analysis of how many people file for unemployment. I always look at that just to see what's happening in the market, right? Now, as a real estate agent or broker or anybody or any profession in the real estate world, you should be aware of what's happening as far as in the job market as well, all right? The second factor is inflation, right? What happens when the cost of goods and services go up at an exponential rate, right? And I think a small tidbit of that, and it's funny because I watched it on the news and then I started to see it. Just last week, we have the whole gas prices were almost at what, $4, almost $4 at the pump. So I think looking at inflation and other market factors, you really you have to look at the economy in a holistic way. And what I mean by that, something as simple as a cyber attack on a gas line in our country sent gas prices skyrocket, right? Skyrocketing. People were almost going crazy in certain parts of the country, right? But as a real estate professional, these are things that you have to look at. It's funny because I'm a property manager and we're doing some work at one of our properties. We have a new tenant and doing a build out. and build outs are pretty standard. Some of you real estate agents know apartment turnovers are pretty standard. So I get a proposal from one of my vendors, and the price was astronomically different than what it normally is. And I said, why? Well, he said, well, wood has actually increased. So, to buy, I'm not a construction guy, but to buy wood, is normally one price. And now because wood is harder to get for whatever reason, wood prices jump. So therefore, that made the price of our project jump. So those are just certain things as a real estate professional that you have to be aware of what's happening in the economy. All right. The next one is the stock exchange. I'm not super into stocks, but I do have a portfolio, and I make sure to check it. And I know now we have crypto and some of these other type of crypto and Bitcoin and some of these other type of cyber ways of making money. But looking at the stock market is also an indicator of where the real estate market is going to go as a whole as well. So for me, the company that I work for, we're a publicly traded company. So we're always looking at what is happening with our stock and what's happening in the market. And same thing for other real estate companies as well. So those are just a couple factors as far as a real estate as a real estate agent or real estate professional, should I say, what you're looking for. And the other is affordability, right? And I think we all can say that New York, so I was born and raised in Bed-Stuy, right? And I remember back in the day, Bed-Stuy was Bed-Stuy. But now Bed-Stuy is really Bed-Stuy. And brownstones, or I think a friend just told me the other day that their brownstone was appraised for about almost $2 million, right? And this is right along, and this is right along Marcus Garvey that runs right through the heart of Bed-Stuy. So, affordability is always a factor. I would say, and maybe some of the real estate agents and brokers would know even better than me, but I would say a one bedroom in Bed-Stuy can range anywhere from about on the lowest point, and I haven't seen it, maybe $1,900 to maybe 21 or 22 for a one bedroom, right? And if you're talking about a two bedroom, you're talking about more money. So affordability always plays into your real estate profession as well. Again, I lived in Kansas, and to rent out a whole house, obviously it was years ago, was about $700-800, right? So I don't think you could even rent a bathroom in Brooklyn or in New York City for $700-800. It's very funny. And, I never like to get it. And it's funny because Darnell and we spoke about this before. And, Darnell asked me, sorry, I'm going to tell you business a little bit. He's like, man, what about if we talk about politics? And I said, listen, I'm very politically involved. I'm on my community board. I vote every single, I don't care if it's judge, whatever it is, assembly, senate, I vote all the time. But it's interesting that two of our mayoral candidates, and again, I didn't see it. I'm just reading the reports. They were asked what the average home price was. And I'm not sure if you've seen it, Darnell. They were asked what the average home price was in Brooklyn. And they said $80,000 to $100,000. I said, where in Brooklyn are you going to find any type of residence for $80,000 to $100,000, right? So it just shows you, and yeah, not to say that they're informed or anything, but I think that real estate changes so quickly here in New York City that we always have to be aware of what's in the market, and we have to be aware of what's around us. And I think a buddy of mine, they did a Zillow search and they typed in $80,000 to $100,000, and the only thing that came up was a lot in Brownsville, was a vacant lot, in a vacant parking lot in Brownsville for $80,000 to $100,000, right? So, again, it's just important that we understand the job market, we understand affordability, we understand inflation, and we understand exactly what's happening in the stock market too, right? Because those affect us. And Darnell, you as a business owner, how has COVID, and I haven't even spoken about COVID affecting things, and I know for me, in my years of being on this earth, I've never seen anything single-handedly bring the world to a halt the way from what I've seen, the effects of what COVID has done. On the real estate front, COVID has made us renegotiate terms with tenants that have long-standing leases. And I don't remember any time in recent history that a tenant can say, hey, landlord, I can't pay rent. it's time for you to make an abatement, and the landlord says, okay, right? So Darnell, for you and your business, whether it's real estate or dealing with tenants or dealing with your business, how has COVID or just any of the market factors affected you and how you do your business?
Okay, well, starting on the real estate side, you can hear me, right?
Yes, good.
So starting on the real estate side, I have had tenants move out over the last 6 months. They're finding jobs, North Carolina, back up in Boston. I had a lot of people who were either in the tech space or they worked for like Broadway, and they had to pack up and go back home. So that's pretty much live with parents, married couples that literally have to go back live with one of their parents, in a house. People that their job, since they're now they can work from home, they can work anywhere, and New York was too expensive for them overall. In terms of like renovations, I've seen people, workers not coming out if it is not an empty unit. From apartment renovations to house renovations, they just were saying no, they're not going in that house if people live there or if people are really afraid. And then I also have dealt with people who have just like when we first started my restaurant, you told me it was going to take me longer than I expected because I'm not used to dealing with bureaucracy of certain things when it comes to renovations.
Yeah.
And COVID really has thrown just if we had started our renovations, started in COVID, I don't know how we probably wouldn't be open due to when you saw where we were at the time. If that was in the middle of COVID, we probably wouldn't be open right now because literally everything is at a standstill. And back then, when we were just seeing studs and walls, when I showed you the place, literally it was like, yeah, this is gonna take you longer than expected. But I was optimistic, and I soon learned that you were correct on that one. But if that was if COVID was then, we probably wouldn't have nothing, because from the architect's standpoint, going to his office and seeing how they have, they had cubicles and everybody right next to each other. Like, I'm sure the architect couldn't get no one into his office because of how their cubicles was tightly put. And they were out there in Astoria, Queens, in like I would say about a 2,000 square foot office with maybe about 30 people in cubicles the size of 4 foot, just a computer in a cubicle, and just people stacked everywhere. So I can only imagine they're not getting half the work they used to get done now because of all the COVID regulations and such. On the restaurant side, our numbers were projected, like the numbers we projected originally didn't compare to what we dealt with to COVID. Comparatively to other people that seen our numbers, they were just like, oh, you're doing well because you're able to survive through COVID, but not at a profit, more of a break even. And most people weren't breaking even at all through COVID. We were able to open during COVID, grand opening during COVID, and generate a buzz and generate some kind of traffic that we were able to keep the lights on. I mean, now we're going through a battle with our landlord now and it's a funny thing because I'm also a landlord. So we're going through a battle with our landlord on trying to possibly renegotiate and just see how we can go forward. And, we had the conversation the other day, and it's really hard because I am a landlord as well. So I understand the landlord's plight and what's going on. But at the same time, is just like my tenants who are moving out and moving other places, you have to understand this is a life-changing event that it's not just money that you say, give me rent and, solves anything, because there is implications that come with it. Who's hiring is one thing. It's hard right now hiring people to come in the restaurant. They just don't have to work because unemployment's paying them so well. Inflation is going up because now they're telling us wings prices may be $5 by the end of June, $5 a pound, and you're talking about back this time.
Hold on now. Hold on, don't raise the price of the wings, because when I come there, that's mostly what I eat.
Well, I mean, we did raise the price of rings in the last couple weeks, but I mean, the wings when we first started was like $100 a box. Now they're talking about $200 a box by the end of next month. So I mean, we have to reconsider some things, but I mean, we're okay for now. but we have to reconsider some things. But you're right. Who's hiring? Inflation, stock market. I constantly watch CNBC. I read Wall Street Journal every morning. If I don't get to it, I'm reading past papers to catch up on current events, because current events is what's going to make you understand what's happening. Like the ketchup shortage, we had that was something I read about weeks prior to people in the restaurant industry talking about ketchup shortage, because I read it and I was like, all right, well, now we're going to stock up on everything. You know, because if there's a ketchup shortage, there's going to be a shortage on something else. We just have to stock up on everything and have at least a week's worth of items, because what we seen during COVID was people didn't have things and they couldn't sell it. Like people were looking for toilet paper. And I know restaurants that just sold the excess toilet paper just to get people in the door to be able to sell them items.
Wow. No, thank you for that. And I appreciate you giving that insight, because this is real, you know, and you have insight from two aspects, right? You have insight as a property owner, as a property manager, right? And you have insight as a restaurant owner, as an entrepreneur as well. So thank you for that. Thank you. All right, so moving on, you know, all right. So we'll go to just, you know, again, we're kind of going through the baseline just to give you guys of a couple real estate companies, right? And when we're talking about this, and as we get into some of the property management material, these are just some baseline real estate companies that you'll see: Brookfield, Holstead, Related, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, right? These are, and we're going to get into how it differs within real estate. So most people, when they think of real estate, they think of a real estate agent, right? But I'll tell you what I tell a lot of people: real estate is a whole industry unto itself. So being a real estate agent is just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning of what the industry has. What I'll say is this: some of the real estate careers and paths are very, very, very interesting. So I have a lot of, you know, folks in the community, people always ask me, I want to get into real estate, right? And when they say that, they always think about being an agent or being a broker. And I'll say that there are so many paths within the real estate career. You have being a construction worker as a contractor, you're building, you have real estate finance, you're lending. You have obviously being a real estate agent or being a broker. You have being a real estate entrepreneur, whether that's flipping or whether that's doing whatever it is that you want to do in a career. You also have being a home and property inspector as well. That's a big business. We'll have a property inspector on tomorrow. We have being a property appraiser. And something that's important, something that I really decided to put into this, is real estate and the nonprofit space. And I've noticed throughout my years in real estate that I don't see this a lot, except for like your NHSs, neighborhood housing services, your Bridge Street developments, right, which is in Bed-Stuy, and some of the other ones, and like your Pratt area community councils. But real estate in the nonprofit sense, I believe, can help real estate professionals out in a down market. And here's what I mean by that. If you want to kind of create a versatile type of real estate business for yourself, help. Again, I'm going to say help. And what I mean by that, a lot of these nonprofits like NHS, their goal is to keep homeowners in their home. The goal is to educate homeowners of what to do. Their goal is to even educate tenants about rules and regulations. If you're a real estate agent and broker and you're having tough times, why not, right? Why not create a small nonprofit where if you're not selling someone a home or renting someone an apartment or appraising a property or inspecting a property, you can be on the nonprofit side of it, and you can also help and lend a service as well to people in need. All right. So those are, you know, again, there are real estate paths and careers are endless. You even have even social services, right? We're looking at things from a social services aspect as well. You have affordable housing, being an affordable housing advocate as well. So there's so many different nuances and so many different career paths within the real estate industry that you can take, that the possibilities are really limitless. But as a real estate professional, whatever it is that you do, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a property appraiser, you know, any of that, it's always good to kind of just know what's happening in the other space. Darnell, could you talk about your 3D business? Because I'm thinking maybe that's something that I need to put into this slide here, because it's becoming, and the reason why I want you to talk about it, because it's becoming so popular. Never in my life have I seen the use of 3D rendering, Matterport, so much at any time in my real estate career, right? Because I think it's needed now because people aren't going to, for a long time, 2020, people weren't going to open houses, right? I was fortunate enough that I was able to get a property in 2020, which is great. My wife and I were able to get a property, which was great. We went to a physical open house, but before that, we did the 3D tour. And I'm on Zillow all the time, just looking at properties. And some of these 3D tours are nice. Some of these 3D tours, you're like, wow, right? I don't even need to physically go see the property. So can you just talk about what you do in the 3D touring space and the Matterport space, and how does that affect a buyer's decision? Because I'm a little old school, right? I like to be in something. I like to see it. I like to touch it. I like to open the door, look in the closet. And what's been the effect of 3D tours for your client base and for real estate agents and brokers?
So in regards to 3D tours, I've been doing it for the last 4 years. I had saw the equipment back in the Jacob Javits Center during a landlord convention. I think it's called Landlord. They do it every year. Landlord New York does it, and they do it at Jacob Javits Center, and they highlight different industries that could benefit from being a landlord or a property manager, whether it be garbage bag services and stuff like that. So I have been utilizing Matterport for myself as a real estate agent as well as property owner to help me be able to say if I renovate an apartment, I do a scan either before and after to have a mental picture on what the property looked like prior and what it looked like after, so that I engage if I increase the space or I limited space. I'm able to get 2D floor plans of the exact space, and I'm able to say I scanned something and I realize that, hey, there's a wall behind there. I'm able to actually expand apartment, not realizing there's a wall there, and you're able to see when you actually have the blueprints. Because I mean, aside from a lot of these older buildings, you won't be able to know the blueprints unless you go down to the city records, and sometimes they don't even have it depending on what year because they had a fire and things got lost. 3D walkthroughs are being used a lot, and it's helpful to go there. But sometimes you see a house and you want to pick between 5 or 10 houses, and you want to be able to go back and forth in that house to see if you missed anything. And the 3D walkthrough gives you the ability to be, on the toilet in the morning, and look at it on your phone. Some people do that. Or just, just have the ability to say, look at 20 houses and not have to, waste gas, find parking. Because, showing a house, I show clients houses over the last couple of months, and it gets tiring. Clients are just like fed up because they're getting outbidded now. And it's like, yeah. I just want to see the house and put in a bid, and that's what it is. If they, how I used to do it when I first started was I would scan a property that I'm renting or selling. I would put it on social media, and from the 3D walkthrough, if someone was interested, I send them the link. And from that, they'll be able to give me the determination. Do they want to see it and go further? Because if you send them pictures, they're always going to want to see it. But once you send them a 3D walkthrough, I've had many people that said, oh, this apartment's not for me. I don't like how the both bedrooms are right next to each other. Or I don't like the certain configuration. And they made that that judgment just off of utilizing 3D walkthrough. They didn't have to come and waste my time, even though it's not a waste of time, but there is certain situations where, someone will call you 7 o'clock at night. Hey, I'm rushing to see this apartment that you're showing. I know it ends at 7:30. I could be there in 30 minutes beyond the factor of you leaving. But then you could say, hey, here's a 3D walkthrough. If you want to see it in person, I could schedule another time. But sometimes a realtor doesn't have the ability to do that,
So you're working with brokerages, right? So you're working with the firms, and like what does that relationship look like? Is it a real estate team? Because sometimes you have the team that will specifically work with you, or is it the firm as a whole that you're working with?
So so the company I work for as an agent is Heights Realty Advisors in Crown Heights. So I pretty much scan all our properties. I have worked with Jamila, who is with Keller Williams. So I'm sure you're familiar with Jamila. I've done some scans for her utilizing floor plans.
Okay.
Because sometimes she gets large spaces that she just needs a floor plan for. I've done a couple of properties for her over the last couple of months. Usually large houses or sometimes small apartments where the owner wants to see what the floor plan looks like if they're going to purchase this house or rent this apartment. But she pretty much sticks with sales opposed to
Okay.
rentals. But pretty much for the most part, I've been focused on every other business outside of the real estate realm. Like I've done a couple of museums, I've done a couple of art galleries, I've done the Richard Beaver Gallery in Bed-Stuy.
Oh wow. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my
I've done the
spot.
Alex Austin House in Staten Island. I've done the Morris Jewel Museum in Harlem. So I mean, this industry is really wide and open. Like it's not just designed just for the real estate industry, but COVID has caused it where people want to see things, but they don't want to leave the comfort of their own home. They don't see a point in leaving. So if they said, hey, I want to see the Alice Austin new exhibit, they go on their website, click, you get the 3D walkthrough that I did of their current exhibit.
You know what I was, I was thinking, we spoke yesterday about a space. I just remembered I had a huge tenant that moved out of one of my shopping centers, and I have about 50 or 55,000 square feet that's vacant. So we may need to connect on that as well. It's out in Long Island. So and I thought about it. So
not a problem. I mean, I am, there's not that many, I was saying, I have not come across many 3D companies in New York. There are a good bit of them because a lot of the big firms, they'll buy the cameras and stuff and spend thousands of dollars and have it in-house, but sometimes it is the real estate agent doesn't have the time to go and scan all these units. That's where my company comes in, where you can call us and say, hey, put us on retainer and we'll scan all these units, archive them, and have them available for any time that your owner wants to rent an apartment. Now the insurance companies are getting into the business where they are taking a 3D scan from Matterport, archiving it. God forbid that building burns down or that apartment burns down. They have a system called Xactimate that it literally they could appraiser or estimator can now go in and estimate what it will cost to rebuild that apartment or that house given that space. So I have talks with some companies in Georgia when they do these spec houses and they sell people houses, they would also sell them the Matterport of their house. So if, God forbid, the house ever burns down, they could use that and said, hey, insurance company, we had a flat screen on that wall, we had this on there, and it's easier for them to now rebuild it. Granted, these new houses are being built, they have blueprints and drawings, but things happen, things get lost in the shuffle. You as an owner now could have it. So what I'm trying to devise something with a company where when they sell a house, they'll give them the 3D walkthrough with all the collateral for it. So now it's like, hey, I have all this information. Now I can utilize it to figure out, do I want to take down this wall or do I want to readjust something? So it's giving a lot of people more control of things in their sphere of things that they have, like their apartment, their house. They want to show their parents' house. They want to show their parents their house that they bought, but their parents live in South Africa or their parents live in Europe. Instead of their parents coming here, they can send them the link. Hey parents, this is where I live. This is the house that I bought. And you can scan inside and outside of a property. It can get really in depth, especially when you factor in drones and drone pictures. It helps.
You know what? Every time I hear about, not even in the real estate industry, but to hear about another business or someone starting a business, kind of that COVID expedited, so to speak, right? So COVID definitely took its toll on a lot of industries, real estate mainly being one. But then to hear stories like this, like I never even thought about for insurance purposes, right? So, and I think that's incredible that there's somebody somewhere like you, even in the middle of COVID, that shifted and has a business that is a necessity now. And I think moving forward, even on Zoom, and I'm not gonna lie, right? Before COVID, if there was a Zoom call or a Zoom webinar, I'd be like, I'm not attending that, right? But now it's the norm, right? So now these Zoom webinars are the norm. And I think moving forward, what you do with Matterport and 3D renderings is going to be the norm in real estate. It's going to be the norm. So I think something like that is here to stay moving forward, regardless of anything. And I know the CDC that they're, restricting guidelines with their masks, but I think your industry of what you just said is here to stay for the long term.
Yes, I totally agree. Even like so Airbnb, VBRO, TripAdvisor, they're starting to incorporate 3D walkthroughs into their platform because they're realizing that people are getting duped when renting a place. When they walk in, they flew halfway across the world and they walk into this place and
Makes
it's
sense.
not what they expected. So when I had an Airbnb in Pennsylvania, I had a 3D scan of the house, so a 4-bedroom house, bath and a half, 2 floors, wash and dry included. And just from people seeing that 3D, it gave a lot more rent. I got a lot more rentals because once they reached out to me on one of those platforms and I found a way to send them the link because sometimes with the platform, they don't allow you to send links like that. But if they were really interested in it, I was able to send them the link. They were just like, okay, this makes sense. I don't need anything more. Like they were okay with it.
Yeah, so here's a question, and we'll take questions throughout, but at the end we'll reserve time for questions. But I think this is a really good question. This is for you. This is from Teresa Smith. She put, how can you ensure that your 3D walkthrough pictures will result in your sale? The buyer can go to other agents.
So with the 3D walkthrough, you could have analytics, and the analytics is going to be able to tell you who's clicking on it, and how many people are unique to your links. So you'll be able to say, all right, well, I posted it here on Monday. I'm going to take it down on Friday, and you'll have analytics to say, well, 200 people looked at it, right? And say you just put it on your website, you didn't boost it on Facebook, you didn't do anything, but you'll know that you'll be able to gauge what worked and what didn't work. You won't be able to isolate who exactly clicked on it, but you'll have an idea of who's interested in and what resulted from it. More specific to your question is, it's different from what a lot of realtors are doing. A lot of realtors are, camera phone, and they're trying to do 3D scans with their phone, but it's still not the same. Even in with my industry of doing 3D walkthroughs, the cost of it, I work with a lot of different people on the cost because sometimes the cost could be very could be a lot, where they're like, well, I'm paying you $200-300 to scan this say 3,000 square foot area, and their commission is maybe $200-300. I may tell them, hey, if you have 5 of these, let's come up to some kind of agreement. But it's working with everybody. But definitely the analytics is. Hold on, I got somebody driving with a blasting car. But yeah, I mean, the analytics is what's going to help you to figure out what's working and what's not working, because it's new, and if you advertise it in the right way, people are going to gravitate to it. In terms of guaranteeing a sale, I can't say it'll guarantee a sale, but it's going to give you a level up from just walking around the apartment or the house with just a video, because now they're able to see it all day long, 24/7. There's no limitation to how many times they can see it.
Well, you know what I think is interesting too, right? Because I'm looking at properties all the time still, and I think it's very interesting, even still now in this day and age, when I see listings that they have pictures and the pictures look terrible, and you can see the difference between one of those listings and an agent or broker who has a 3D rendering, and you gravitate more towards that because, I mean, if you're a consumer. If I'm a consumer, my thought process is this agent cares about their product, right? This agent cares about making the best deal. They present very well. So I think for me, if I'm a consumer or any consumer, you're definitely going to gravitate towards the 3D rendering because, in short, it shows you that, hey, the agent cares. The agent gives a damn about their product, right? They care about what they're putting out into the world. So.
Agreed. And then with the 3D walkthrough, it's kind of a one-stop shop. Videos could be made from it. You could actually have it play and walk through the space, and the person just hit play or automatically play and walk through the entire space. And the pictures that come from it, you can get up to 4K shots from it. So literally, a person goes there. I go there and I scan the entire space, and I'm able to bring back so much collateral that is one visit is all I need. Once I'm there for an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, I could get everything I need in one shot, and I never have to come back there again. So if you want a video, you can get a video. If you want pictures of the bathroom from different angles, I can get that. It's there's no, okay, I need to get a photographer. Oh, I need to get a videographer. Oh, I need to get a drone pilot. Everything could be all in one.
Gotcha. No, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Again, it's changing how we, it's going to change how we do. Well, Marcia, you asked my question. So Marcia asked, what does this stuff cost? Like, what's the pricing? Like what is, so let's say you have, you can give us some examples as opposed to, let's say it's a typical one family and, 2,000 square feet, 1,800 square feet, and then a one bedroom apartment. Like, what is the pricing range to have this service?
Okay, so pricing can get a little bit, well, I would say it's not too cumbersome. Roughly 0 to 2,000 square feet has a base price of $150 with
Oh,
8
wow.
cents.
Not
Yeah,
bad.
with additional with 8 cents per square foot.
Oh, okay.
And then the next range above that is so base you're going to be paying $150, and then you have a base again. You have 8 cents per square foot, depending on your size of your property. So it really ranges, and sometimes if it's like the, let's think about it, like the Morris Gilman Museum that I scanned, that's literally about 15,000 square feet. And a property like that, multi-floor, a deal had to be struck because the price that they would have paid after with a square foot, it didn't make any sense.
Gotcha.
But it was a one-off in a sense, but they wanted to do multiple, like a longevity contract where that space had to be renewed every year. So something like that had you're gonna have a smaller cents per square foot.
Gotcha.
But on average, you're looking at least base, you're looking at least $150. When it comes to like the collateral, I typically include a lot of the collateral free of charge. If I'm already doing a 3D walkthrough, unless it's like you want something like you want a floor plan or you want something very different. I kind of include it all in one price because most people will say, all right, well, it's $300 to do the scan, $100 to do the floor plan, $100 to do the video, $100 to do it. But by the time you look at it, you have $1,000 bill. And most, me being a landlord, a tenant, and a real estate agent, I understand. Sometimes you're selling the property, and your commissions maybe $5,000, and you're not trying. You got bills to pay with that on your mind. So I know that if the price point works for you, you're gonna do it, and you're gonna continue to do it. So I try my best to work with everybody, work at all different budgets, trying to get, we're all trying to get the same goal. We're trying to produce something that people can enjoy. Turnaround time. Typically.
And what's included, she said.
Yeah, so what's included, typically, depending on the size of the space, you'll get videos, short videos. You'll get pictures. You can get a floor plan. It really depends on the size of the space. If it's a large space, then floor plans could range anywhere from like $50 to $100, depending on how many floors you have. If it's like a 10-story building, then I haven't really done something that large. But I mean, I would work out some kind of price point that would work for you. Typically, like I have a lot of landlords who have like larger spaces where, say they have a 6-story building, and I scan individual apartments on different floors, but yet the makeup is the same. We can either use the same link to advertise, say 6J and 5J. Both of them are empty, but you don't want to scan both of them. We could use the link and just rebrand it, 5J, and you won't have to pay that whole price for me coming out. I can just copy it. Turnaround time usually takes about 24 to 48 hours for you to have
good.
all.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, for you to have all your stuff. The floor plans could take a little bit longer. You're looking at about tops 48 hours. But you can have everything fairly quickly, depending on if you get everything to me. And I also could include if you work for like a particular agency, if you give me your logo, I could have your logo a part of your 3D walkthrough as well.
I'm intrigued, and you know what, Darnell, if you can in the chat, just before we forget, if you just put your information there, that would be good too, just so everyone can have it as well. All right.
Let me see if I could get everyone. Okay, so that's the website. and I'll give you a typical 3D walkthrough so that way people understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that'd be good if you can give them a sample. So appreciate that, and thank you for that. So all right, so we're gonna move on as we dive deeper into property management.
Yes, you can watermark your product.
Oh, somebody, okay,
Yes.
good. And as we dive deeper into property management, just kind of three principles that I like to do business by, and I call them the 3 C's, just character, commitment, and capacity, right? And what that means is, for me, the most important one is character. What type of character does the person have that you're doing business with? What type of person are they, right? In real estate, we meet so many people that do not have good character. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we have good character as well, and that we're dealing with people that also have that trait also too. And I'm telling you, it'll make a real estate transaction so much easier. I've been in situations where people aren't just good folks, and it just makes the situation really, really difficult. Right. The second C is commitment. So if you're working with somebody, whether it's and I know for people who have, especially the real estate brokers, right? If you're a broker and you have agents, how committed is your agent to you? Do they have 5 jobs, right? How committed are they to you? And not only to you, but just to the business of being in real estate, right? So commitment is always important. Also, if you have a contract, right, and you're doing work, how committed is that contractor to you and your project? That's important. In the 3 C's, and sorry for the typo, instead of go, it should be good. But capacity, how good are they at their job, right? So people have different capacities. There are a million real estate agents in New York City, but not all of them have the same type of capacity. Not all of them, they can say they can do the job, but do they have the capacity to get their job done, right? So these are just a couple things that in real estate I think are important. And they're the 3 C's. So they've always helped me out, and I'll just passing those tidbits onto you in your property management, right? So we're going to dive into actual property management, right? So that, sorry. All right, so we have the property manager. So looking at it is the screen, perfect. The property manager, sorry, just trying to figure out where to put this screen at. All right, we'll go with that. All right, so the property manager. What is the role of a property manager? What is a property manager? What tasks do they perform? What is expected in the day-to-day? What is expected in their role? And who does a property manager work for? Do they work for themselves or do they not? So these are some of the things that we're gonna dive into now. So let's look at it. We'll bypass that. All right, so here's just a tidbit from property management book. The introduction. What is property management? At its core, property management encompasses many tasks that may or may not be performed by the property manager. That's an important term, and we'll get to that. Property management in its core is the oversight of property by an individual or a team for the owner. Tasks may include leasing, selling, rent collection, maintenance, marketing, budgeting, tenant relations, and property improvement. So these are all things that you as a property manager that you may do. Now it depends on how your structure is. So if you're working for a company, right? If you're an employee working for a company, you may do some, or you may do all of this. If you're working as an individual, and we're getting to licensing stuff, you may or may not do some of these issues as well. So it's important to understand the goals of the owner. So whoever you're working for, it's important to know what they want and what they expect of you as a person who's managing their property. And I'll say this, and I'll be honest. And obviously I'm going to be biased because property management, I just love property management. And even though, yes, I am a real estate broker, but I've always gravitated more towards property management. And I'll say this, I believe that property management will give you a really holistic view at real estate in general, right? And what I mean by that is because as you are a property manager, you're dealing with everything. So you can be dealing with leasing, you can be dealing with sales, but you're also dealing with the city. And we all know if you have affordable units or rent regulated units, you're dealing with HUD, you're dealing with HPD. You're also dealing with Ms. Jackson, who has a leak. You're also dealing with, you know, you're dealing with so many issues as a property manager that you will gain an overall holistic understanding of how real estate works, and not just one narrow-minded view of it, because you're dealing with so much. You're paying bills, you're paying invoices, you get a ticket from not taking your trash out on time from sanitation. I'm telling you, and Darnell, you know, as a property owner who has a business, and you scratch your head like, man, why do I have a ticket? I thought I put my trash out the time you told me to.
Cameras will save you. That's all.
And you know, and that brings up another thing, safety, right? So, you know, as a property manager, and I know for me, in my personal experience, you know, I'm not sure if anybody's noticing, and again, I'm always two-sided with the news and with the media, but for example, right, they say that there's an uptick in crime, right, here happening in New York City. You see with all the articles that have been published about the subway slashing. You know, I've managed some rough buildings early in my career that safety was an issue. And as a property manager, this is something that you have to deal with, right? If you're not a property manager and you're a broker or agent, you rent that unit to whomever you rent the unit to, you're done, right? You pick up your commission and you're on to the next. So so as a real estate agent, property management is kind of like the next thing, because as an agent, and it's all a part of the same circle. As an agent, you're responsible for leasing, and you get that tenant in there, boom, you get the deal done. Then the agent is gone, and now you as the property manager, you're dealing with that person that's in the unit for the long term. And people come with many different issues. So, you know, again, as a property manager, you're dealing with so much. You're paying bills, you're paying invoices. Tenant is calling you about the tenant upstairs. And I'm not lying to you. A tenant will call you about the tenant upstairs making noise at a certain time, at 9 o'clock. And you're like, you know, whatever, right? When you calling me, there's other things to be thinking about, but you always have to have your property management hat on. And I'll tell you this, as a property manager, people come to me and they say, hey, you know, I want to work in property management. I always tell them, are you ready to work all the time? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Property management is not a 9-to-5 job. The Christmas that just passed, it was Christmas morning, Darnell, Lottie and I, it's Christmas morning, and we're opening up gifts. You know, I have my wife and I have a son, and he's a couple months old. We're opening up gifts and my phone ring, and the wife, she said, is that work? I said, yeah, it's work. So I pick up the phone. It's one of my tenants, one of my big box national tenants. Somebody on Christmas morning, somebody took a truck and drove it through the front of their door, smashed the window, and did a kind of like a smash and grab for gifts. And I'm on the phone Christmas morning dealing with the local police department and dealing with the tenant and dealing with their real estate department, all while I'm trying to drink hot chocolate, you know, and do my Christmas thing. So
I got another one. I got a Christmas morning one. Just Christmas morning too. 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. Christmas morning, mind you, I would, you know, no one's able because of COVID. So I had family over, small gathering, and you know, I went to sleep late. 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a call. The pipe breaks on the second floor.
Well, that's the classic.
Floods down. It passes a renovated apartment that I recently renovated the last couple of years. Passes it, just trickles water in, right? But floods out the entire basement.
Wow.
Entire basement, like entire, like I've never seen water in my life, that much water, like, because it was a main water line, and just floods out the entire, like at least about 4 or 5 inches of water in about I would say about a 25,000 square foot basement, just water everywhere. But good thing for me, I had installed drains throughout the property the previous summers. Like I was prepared for this.
Yeah, so I was gonna say you must have knew what could potentially happen there.
Yeah. I was also able to I cleared up a lot of any garbage that was in the basement, so that also helped out too.
Yeah, you know, no, that's again, and that's just another example as a property manager. So, you know, I tell everyone, if you're looking for a standard 9-to-5, property management is, you know, maybe you may need to rethink being in the property management industry, because it's definitely not a standard 9 to 5. All right.
Yeah, even when you go on vacation, people think it's hard.
Never
It's
vacation.
easy. You know, they're
Never
like, oh,
vacation.
they're like, oh, vacation. No, you get vacation. Like, no, my phone's always on. Whether I'm in another country, it will work internationally. And like I have to. Like I went to Japan and my phone was still working internationally because just in case.
Just in
Someone doesn't-
case.
Yeah, you never know. Like you just have to pay for the plan. They're like, oh yeah, it's 10 cents a minute. All right, well, I'm gonna try not to be on the phone.
Exactly. No, exactly. No. Thank you for that example as well, too. So, you know,
Google
again,
Voice your best friend.
yes, I know. Yes. So as a property manager, right? So a property manager, you strive, in essence, here's what you do. As a property manager, the property manager strives to produce the greatest net return for the owner. The property manager must protect and increase the value of the owner's investment. The property manager acts as the owner's agent and fiduciary in performing property management duties. Again, fiduciary, or you real estate agents and brokers, that's a term that you always hear as well, right? Being a fiduciary. So the question that we get all the time is, do you need a real estate license to be a property manager, right? So that is a question that never gets old. That is a question that is always asked. So here is the answer to that. When is a license required? When one owner of real property employs an individual on a salary basis to perform any of the functions of a real estate salesperson or broker defined in real property law, including collecting rent, the individual does not require, right? It does not require a real estate license. So let's go back. So what does that mean, right? So if you are on a salary, you work for Related or CBRE or one of these other companies, and you're working for them on a salary basis, you do not need a real estate license, all right? But if you want to work for multiple owners, for multiple people, meaning that, in short, if you want to have your own property management business, right? Yes, you should have a real estate license, right? You should have a broker's license. So those are the two things. So I meet a lot of people who are career property managers where they work for property management companies and they do not have their real estate license and they don't need it. Now, here's the caveat. So let's say you work for Related, right? Hudson Yards, and you're on salary, right? You're making a salary every year. You get paid every 2 weeks, and you manage 25 buildings, right? Is a real estate license required? No, because it's one owner. It's one owner, right? But let's say you're not working for them. Let's say you're working on your own and you manage 5 buildings for 2 different landlords. Do you need a real estate license? Yes, you do, because you're working for 2 different owners. My suggestion to anybody who's getting involved in property management, honestly, get the real estate license anyway, right? Just get it. It doesn't hurt. And you take the class, it'll give you insight. You know, for me, I look at it as, and people will always say, I'm going to blame HDTV and I'm going to blame Flip This House, right? Because everybody who watches the episode thinks that they can just jump head first into real estate. Man, I'm going to flip this house. You okay? I've lost money flipping houses. I've lost good money flipping houses, right? So my suggestion for anybody that is looking to get into real estate, just get the license, right? Even if you don't become a everyday real estate agent or broker, but just get the real estate license so you can understand the dynamics of that side of the game. It just makes perfect sense, right? Darnell, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, especially when they watch HGTV and they say, oh, they sold that house for $1 million. I'm like, yeah, but they have the entire team behind them. They have a marketing company, they have construction crews. You're just seeing the easy work. There's hard work behind it. Even when like ABC had that, they renovated a house in 7 days. Like people think that was easy. That was not easy. Like coordinating different people, electrician, plumbers, and then this one didn't do this and that. It's a lot of work. But yes, I agree. I learned because I did property management for my family, and I didn't have a license, and literally my family friend was like, "Hey, you already been doing this, so you might as well have your real estate license and expand upon what you could do."
Yeah, you know what, and I think because of what's happening. So for example, I like to learn about all aspects of real estate. So there's this guy that I listen to. It's called Flipman, right? And he has a YouTube channel, and he deals specifically with wholesalers. So obviously, within the last 5 years, I've seen the rise of wholesalers. Everybody wants to be a wholesaler. Everybody wants to be a wholesaler. Like that is the new trend, right? Every time I talk to somebody, it may not be so much so here in New York because it's really hard to wholesale a property in Brooklyn when you're talking about an $800,000-$900,000 property, right? But out of state, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, even places in California, right? Wholesaling has really started to catch on. So I think from people watching, I can't remember. I think it was a guy. I can't remember what show, but one of those HGTV shows. It was one of my favorite shows, right? They go to a house, they buy it. The house is terrible. They go through some issues, and at the end of the 30-minute episode, they have a nice house, and they sold it to make a $50,000-$60,000 profit. It looks good, right? Look, it's everybody's dream, but it doesn't go like that. So right now, I've really seen a lot of wholesalers, and I think the reason why wholesaling has become so popular is because you don't need a real estate license to wholesale, right? You don't. Again, my opinion, I believe that you should. So in short, a wholesaler is you go to an open house, right? So let's say, Darnell, you have a property, right? You're selling a property, and so you're the owner and you're selling it. So I go to your property as a prospective buyer, and I'm like, hey, I like the property. I'm going to make an offer. You're like, wow, great. Seems like a good guy, right? So when I make the offer, right, put down a down payment. I then take that contract as a wholesaler, and I try to find somebody else, and I try to sell that contract to somebody else to take my position, and I pocket the difference, right? So I say, you know what? I have this deal. I have Darnell's house. It's teed up. Basement is done. You don't have to do any work, Mr. Investor. You don't have to do anything. I teed everything up for you. So the wholesaler would then give it to Mr. Investor. Mr. Investor is happy because he's like, hey, I didn't have to do anything, and this great Joe came to me with this property, right? So at that time, then the wholesaler gets paid 20, 30,000, whatever the finder's fee is. And now the Mr. Investor can now close on that property, right? Wholesaler walks away, $30,000, $40,000, on to the next. To me, in my opinion, there's just a big problem in that, right? It can go well, it can go great, and it can go bad. If it goes bad, it can go really bad. So we're not going to get into wholesaling now, right? Because I could have another 2-hour session about wholesaling, but nonetheless, I still like to know and understand the dynamics of it. So I listen to a guy called Flipman. He's on Instagram, he's on YouTube, and there's some really interesting stuff about what he talks about. And you do see some really great success stories about people that are doing some really good things, flipping properties in other states. I'm telling you, it's very hard to do it in Brooklyn, where a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, even that needs a full gut renovation, is $800,000, $900,000, or $1 million. Maybe I'm even low, maybe even a bit more than that. So it's hard to do that in a place like Brooklyn. But anywho, so with that being said, as a property manager, my suggestion is if you are going to get into real estate, just get the real estate license, right? It won't hurt. It can't hurt to get your real estate license to understand that dynamic of it, all right? Let's move on. And then we got into before, you have, even in residential, right? You have different types. You have single family, you have brownstones, and you have apartment buildings as far as residential types. And here's what the shift was. So traditionally, before 2008, 2009, before the market really tanked, institutional investors invested in large scale apartment buildings and commercial buildings. And the small guys, right, like myself, I'm not going to say you, but the smaller investors who had smaller money invested in this single family homes, right? I can go to Kansas, right outside of Kansas City, in Overland Park and a couple other places. That's where I like to invest. And I don't want to see nobody on this Zoom call going down there because I'm going to know you got it from me, right? But you can go there and you can get a $50,000, $60,000 property, and the ROI is great, cap rates are great, NOI is great, and you can do okay, right? And you can have a small portfolio of 4, 5, or 6 small $50,000 to $80,000 homes, right? Right outside of Kansas City. So people who work inside of Kansas City can commute, right? After the market tanked, a lot of the institutional investors, they shifted. They said, uh-oh, right? We lost a lot of money investing in these large commercial buildings. So then you started seeing these funds being created to go after single family homes. So the smaller investors now had a lot more competition in the single family home market, right? And some would say the same thing in, brownstones here in Brooklyn and in Harlem, right? That more of the institutional investors, they started saying, wow, these brownstones are really popular and people like them, right? And again, I just use Bed-Stuy as an example because that's where I was born and raised, but, brownstone right off the A train, I mean, for a purpose, it's right off the C train. You get off the C train at Troop, let me go to for purpose and get some wings. And then the next block over, you have Bed-Stuy brownstone, right? So a lot of institutional investors started getting involved in the single family home market and the smaller multifamily market. So in property management is always good to be aware of what type of assets that you're managing. Most property managers were start off, I know I did. I started off in residential, right? Not only market rate residential, but I started off in affordable housing residential. And it was tough, right? It was tough because you're talking about tight budgets, tight margins, dealing with the city, dealing with HPD and HUD, highly regulated. So I started off my property management career managing affordable housing units, whether it was tax credits, whether it's, Section 8. That's how I started off my career. And I think it was great because I got to understand the dynamics of some of that because New York City, a lot of people here. So, all right, so that's residential property types.
I started in rent stabilized, so I understand.
Go ahead, brother.
No, I was saying I started off in rent stabilized buildings, so I totally understand.
Listen, I tell anybody this, and again, this is just my bias. When people say, hey, I want to get into property management, where should I go? What should I do? I tell them, get your real estate license and go work for an affordable housing developer. And I say that because, and I'm just saying my experience was overworked, underpaid, but learned a lot, right? And for me at that time, it was great. Again, you're overworked, so you're busting hump every day, day in, day out. Underpaid, so you ain't making much money, but you value what you do. And then, but the learning curve, but you're learning a lot. So when I went off to my next job in commercial, even though the dynamics were different, I was working at a fast pace because I'm dealing with HPD and you have to get this document in and you have to be thorough and you have to be organized and you have to go to this meeting. So I would suggest anybody that's looking to start off their property management career, go to work with an affordable housing developer. Understand that because not only that, it's a community feel. It's a community feel to it, right? You're going to be dealing with people that have been in their units for maybe 30 years, maybe 20 years, right? That they're not going to go anywhere. So you're dealing with, RAD. You're dealing with tax credits. You're dealing with income restrictions and income guidelines, and you're dealing with all of that. So, my opinion for anybody starting out, cut your teeth there. Go work for an affordable housing developer. Cut your teeth there. Understand the dynamics of work orders and how that process works before you go out and blossom to something else. What do you think, Darnell?
No, that totally makes sense. Because you got to start from the bottom. Technically, you really do. Not saying that
Gotta get your butt kicked a little bit.
Huh?
I said you got to get your butt kicked a little bit.
Yeah, you most definitely do. Got to do. You got to learn because I've dealt with when I first started dealing with tenants throwing water on you in the wintertime.
Oh, I've dealt with that, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, people don't know about that until you actually get involved. Like they throw water on you. It's like, yeah, if they don't like you, you didn't do something that they wanted you to do, or you didn't take care of a problem with another tenant. That's a retaliation. You don't know who it comes from. All you see is a splash of water fall down, or an egg, or something like that. Like it is what it is. But you appreciate it as you go through the different levels.
Of course. And same thing for commercial properties. You have different types of commercial properties. You have strip centers, you have larger retail, you have standalone retail centers. So you have different types of commercial property as well. You have mixed use property. So I would say, a lot of New York City has high-end mixed use, middle income mixed use. And I think the thing that makes New York City dynamic and unique, you can go to any borough, right? You go to Queens, you go to Brooklyn, you go uptown, you go downtown, you go Staten Island, you go any borough and you can find an element of mixed-use buildings. And I think that while you can find mixed-use buildings all throughout the country, you know, in different places, but I think, again, my personal opinion, New York City has really unique structure, you know, of these mixed-use buildings. And I've lived in a couple places, and I've never seen an area or a city that has the mixed-use buildings quite like how New York City has. You know, most of the time, if you're a property management, you're going to be managing mixed-use buildings. I've done it for a little bit. I'm pretty sure, Darnell, you've done it. And I think it adds an interesting dynamic because you're dealing with the commercial tenant on the ground level, so the lease may be different, and then you're dealing with a residential component on top. It gets really crazy and gets really funky when you start talking about utilities, especially if it's an older building. Are the utilities mingled? Like what's happening? It has to be, does this have to be sub-metered? Then you have to deal with sub-metering. Then you have to deal, you know, with Con Ed and National Grid. And Darnell, you know, opening up a business, dealing with the utility companies is never nice.
No,
It's never nice.
They take their sweet time, sweet old time, do anything.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's never nice dealing with them. So, all right. All right, so what are some key job elements to being a property manager? So here are some things that you should be aware of once you embark on your property management career. And these are going to be things that are relevant to all aspects of your life. So time management, right? As a property manager, time management is going to be crucial. This is something that I have learned. It's something that I'm still dealing with, right? It's in the fact because you cannot give every single email or every single thing the same priority. Some things are, you have to be able to prioritize, right? You have to be able to manage your time accordingly. And the reason why I put time management as one of the most important things is because a lot of times we're working so much that we don't have time for our family. And I'm and I'm definitely a culprit of that. I mean, this morning I worked until 3:30 a.m. because I had collections to do. So I went to sleep at like 3 o'clock this morning because I needed to get work done. But I'm telling you, time management is going to be one of the most important elements that you manage because time is all you have. People management. Again, it's high on this list because as a property manager, you're going to be dealing with so much. You're going to be dealing with your supers. You're going to be dealing with your porters. You're going to be dealing with Ms. Jones in 2A. You're going to be dealing with Mr. Johnson, in 3B. You're going to be dealing with your owner, right? Your supervisor. Maybe you have a boss. You're going to be dealing with your assistant property manager. You're going to be dealing with other managers that live on your block. You're going to be dealing with other businesses. So being able to manage people in an effective way is super important. It really baffles me when I see a property manager when they have attitudes or when they're just not nice people. Property management is a people-based business. If you're a front-facing person, if you're a property manager, you're interacting with so many people. I'm going to tell you, you can get, and it's an old saying, and I hope I don't mess it up. Correct me if I do. My grandmother used to say, you can get more with, you can attract more with honey than you can with vinegar, right? So sometimes as a property manager and sometimes in real estate, sometimes just being nice to somebody will get that attorney to pick up the phone and return that phone call. Or instead of taking a week to sign that document, they're taking a day, right? Sometimes it just takes being nice to somebody. Or when that guy from Con Ed comes out and he's getting off the truck slow, you're like, hey, happy Friday, right? And he's like, oh, wow, this person's really nice, right? Sometimes managing people and having that skill is all it takes to get the job done. So having people management skills is super important. I know, Darnell, you have to manage people. You have staff, you have business, and you have employees. People don't show up one time. People don't show up at all.
You got to have pleasantries because I've disarmed a couple tenants where, they answer the door all mean. I'm like, good morning, how are you doing?
Exactly.
And they kind of have to like reevaluate themselves. You can see them like thinking in their mind like, oh, okay, yeah, good morning. And we start fresh because maybe they were upset because of the leak coming up. I'm like, good morning, how are you doing? How's your day? Okay, can show me the problem.
Exactly.
You really have to disarm people being in the property, because if you don't and you walk into a heated situation, granted, there will arguing moments where people are going to piss you off.
Of course.
And what I've learned from my aunts and some other people, you don't take it home with you because it's not going to help. Your wife's going to kill you. Your girlfriend's going to kill you. Like, it's just not going to translate.
It's not going to go well.
No, not at all. But definitely, I would say you have to be nice. You have to be a people's person. You have to You know, just show some common decency, be human, show a human emotion, have empathy, and you'll see how far it goes.
No, I have to agree. So you can be, be nice, but also be firm too, right? Because you have a job to do. But managing, but all that comes into being able to, manage people. Again, one thing I'll say, and I don't want to deviate too much. I say that there are things in school that school doesn't teach you, and learn unless you're like a deep in the psychology major. But I think mandatory classes in elementary, high school, and college should be understanding the dynamics of people, right? And in real estate, and I think, and I know a couple very, very successful brokers. So one of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, and she said that, and this is her thought process in managing people. People may forget what you say, people may forget what you do, but they will never forget the way you make them feel, right? And if you make people feel good when you come around, like, hey, that's Darnell. Hey, what's going on, brother? What's going on? As opposed to, Darnell, here he comes, So, and I think that that's important. That's one of my favorite sayings from Maya Angelou, because she's right, right? People will forget what you say. Sometimes they'll even forget what you do. Hey, I scored 30 points in a basketball game in high school. People forget that stuff. But for some reason, people never forget how you make them feel when you come around, whether that's good or whether that's bad, right? So that's just something to think about as a property manager when you're interacting with vendors and when you're interacting with people, especially my vendors. I try to make my vendors feel like they're wanted. I try to make them feel good, so they want to do stuff, right? So they would want to do stuff for me. So I try to always make sure that I make the vendors feel that way, right? The other one is your job expectations. So whether you're with the company or whether with your owner, it's important to know, what do you expect of me, right? As a property manager, I manage this property. What do you expect me to do, right? What is your expectations? What are your goals? The next job element is understanding the property. And I think I'm a very grassroots property manager, even though I don't have to be, because you have supers, you have porters, you have assistants, but I'm at my properties all the time. I'm at my properties at least once a week because I want to see what my properties are doing. I want to understand it. I'm there at night. I have a sweeper. Remember the other night, I went there at 10 o'clock, right, to see what my sweeper is doing. I sat in my car, 10 o'clock at night in a big parking lot, because I wanted to see what my property looked like at night. So it's important as a property manager to understand your property. And if you're not understanding your property, you should, because it's so important, and it can cost you in the long run. Your work-life balance. And I put this on here because I know for all of us, we're always in the grind every day. We're working, but I think it's important to structure your work-life balance. And I know for me, and honestly, I'll be honest, this Zoom class, the Principles of Property Management, I think like a couple months ago, I made a promise to myself that I was not going to do anything past like 6:30, right? Because I wanted to spend that time with family. And you have to have a work-life balance, because if you're working all the time, you'll go crazy and you'll get burnout. So I think it's important when you're a property manager, because you have so many things coming at you, contracts, vendors, the city, HPD, tenant, owner, you have to incorporate a really good work-life balance. Me personally, not every day, but I try to get up at like 4:30 or 5, right? I try to get up, I try to work out, whether that's run, whether that's go to the gym, whatever it is. And then I come back, I'll read, and I'll take that time for myself, and then I'll get involved in work. And I think we have to have a really unique work-life balance, because you only have one mind, right? You only have one family. So we have to make sure that we're getting our jobs done, but we also have that mental capacity to deal with our family as well, all right? On the job training, right? If you're a property manager, you're gonna be learning. Learning on the job is important. Different dynamics that come up is important to understand that. Another thing that's important is get a mentor, right? It's important we get a mentor. And I'll be honest, I have a mentor, and I think he is so I have a few mentors. I have different buckets of mentors. And I think for me, I would say one of my favorite mentors, because I used to be there for a little bit when I was an agent, is Robert Refkin, right? He is the founder of Compass. And I remember meeting him. So I met him years ago, even before Compass was what it is right now. It was a group called the Makers. And the Makers, they would bring together people who were up and coming, right? So we were Robert Refkin was a young pike. I don't even think Compass was even invented yet. That's when he still had New York Needs You. And I remember, listening to him. Oh, okay, guys, the guy's cool. And even when I went over to Compass as a real estate agent, I remember he used, and I'm not sure if there's Compass agents, but he sent out these unique letters, right? These unique letters. And even though Compass has a bunch of agents, but these letters just seem so personal. And just even watching his growth and taking, a young Black man taking the company from what it was to what it is now, it's important. I remember I emailed him the other day, and even though I'm not at Compass, I haven't been at Compass in a while, but he still emailed me back, right? I think, how many times can you say that you see somebody and that's where you want to go or what you want to be, and you email them and they actually send you an email back, right? So they sent me an email back and I was like, oh, wow, he emailed me back, right? And I think I think it's important for all of us to have a mentor, whether it's a direct mentor, somebody that we speak to every day, and I have mentors that I speak to every day as well, but also having a mentor that is where we want to go, right? And I think that that's important, not only in our regular lives, but also as a property manager too, right? Having a mentor, someone to help you, all right? And performance checkpoints. But I think it's important in your job, whether you're a real estate agent, broker, property management, whatever you do, performance checkpoints. How am I doing, right? How am I doing on this job? I think it's important for your supervisors to give you that feedback because you need to know. And something that's important is company culture. And I think it's interesting, right? Because 2020 not only was the year of COVID, right, Darnell, but 2020 was also a year of like social unrest and social change. 2020 was crazy because not only did we have, not only did the year start out with Kobe Bryant passing away, right? Which I was like, wow. Then I think Kobe Bryant passed away in January. And then in February 15th or 16th, the world changed with COVID, right? And then George Floyd happened and all this other stuff started happening. So, a lot of companies started looking at their internal culture about how they view things. So I think it's important, as a property manager, if you're with the company, if you're with the firm, if you're working for an owner, what does that company culture look like, right? Who are you dealing with? So, that's very important. And I commend a lot of real estate firms for looking at themselves and thinking about what their company culture looks like and what that feels like,
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a sit down with a Zoom call with Keller Williams because they were looking at hiring minority contractors to do 3D walkthroughs, video scans, and to photography that outside of who they already dealt with. Because before, from what I was informed, everyone pretty much used the same group of companies. And it was just like, why are we using these same group of companies? And there's smaller companies out there that can do the same work. And maybe they are cheaper. I think COVID caused a lot of companies to reevaluate what they were spending money on.
Yes.
And said, wow, we could save. Why are we spending $5,000 a month for this? And we can actually pay $2,500 and increase investor value. I think hands down, it boiled down to increasing investor value, but it was a social. It had to be done socially. Like it was something like a social experiment in a way that, yeah, we have to get this done, and it's going to do this for us too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. And then personal growth and development, right? I think somebody put me time, right? Me time is important. So we have to, us as property managers, real estate professionals, what does that personal growth and development look like? Are we growing? Are we developing? Are we moving forward with who we are in our careers, right? So those are just some important job elements that I thought about as being a property manager, because I've experienced the good and the bad and of each and every single one of the job elements. So when it comes to time management, there's a time where I was terrible with time management, right? People management, there's a time where I was terrible with people management. So I've seen, the goods and bads of both aspects. I've been somewhere where I didn't have a mentor. I've been somewhere where a job where the company culture was terrible. And I'll tell you this, right? And again, just my opinion, there was a point in time, and this job does not even show up on my resume and nowhere on my LinkedIn or nothing, but there was a job that I went to every day as a property manager that I absolutely hated, right? Now, I'm not sure if anyone has experience going to a job that you absolutely hated. I tell you what it does. When something good comes along, it makes you appreciate it in a way that you never would even imagine, right? So, and I think that having those experiences in your work life and personal life is super important, right? Because that job that I hated, when I had something better, I really appreciated it that much more. So it's just important as far as company culture and personal growth and development as well. All right. So quick housekeeping tip or rule. Darnell, we were talking, so we didn't get a break, so we're gonna go. So we're gonna go until 7, and we're gonna maybe have a couple questions for if anybody wants to ask a couple questions, and then we'll pick up tomorrow. All right, so we'll go over this. Property management. So here's just a quick guide of what a property manager does. You have mortgage and utility payments, accounting, you have leasing, security deposits, inspection of properties, repair and maintenance, and rent collections. And what I'll say, I can't sit here and say which one is important and which one is not, because they all are, right? Because you have to pay your mortgage and utility payments. If not, you're going to be sitting in the dark and have no water, right? You have to collect rent, because rent is the lifeblood of the property, right? If not, then what are you doing? You have to repair and maintain your property, because nobody's going to pay rent for a property that looks terrible. And you have to inspect your property on a daily basis. Security deposits are important. Leasing is the lifeblood, right? Nobody can pay rent if the property doesn't get leased. And accounting services is important. So what I'll say is this: contingent on, again, the company, what type of assets you're managing, will be contingent on how well you hone your skills, right? So all types, whether it's residential, industrial, or commercial, you need to be able to manage utility payments and accounting, right? It could be commercial properties where you're looking at NOIs, where you're looking at cash for cash returns, and you're dealing with investors, and you're looking at cap rates and things of that nature with commercial assets. Or it could be residential, where it's not so much of that, because maybe you're in affordable housing and the dynamics are different, right? But that could be more leasing heavy, because you have more turnover in residential as opposed to commercial. So no matter what, this is the nucleus of the skills that are needed to be a property manager. Darnell, what do you think?
No, you're totally right. Totally right in it. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, as a property manager, accounting services, I hated accounting. I had to take a couple levels of accounting in college, so I hated accounting, but it helped me to this day to figure out what I needed to do.
Exactly. So, and what I tell people is this, right? So something simple for accounting. And until I had the position that I have right now, I didn't see accounting as a need. But for us, we had to figure out, and one accounting concept is, are we going to run on our budget as an accrual basis or on a cash basis, right? Yeah. So for us, we run it on an accrual, meaning that we document an expense when it happens, whether we pay it then or not, right? So if Joe went out to fix or repair concrete in November, we're going to document that as being in November. We can get the bill or invoice in February, but that is an accrual basis, right? And the cash basis is you record it when you get paid, when you pay it, right? So whenever you get the invoice, you pay it. So that's just something simple with accounting. Even though right now, it may not seem like a big deal, but when I got to my position now, and in the beginning, I was like, damn, what in the world is this, right? But after repetition, it becomes second nature. But that's something as a property manager, you have to understand, because no matter what kind of property manager you are, affordable housing or not, you should understand budgeting. You should know how to create a budget. You should know how to implement the budget, and you should know how to follow that budget. You should know what a variance is, right? So if you budgeted $10,000 and you spend $15,000, that's a $5,000 variance. Why? You have to explain that to your boss, to your supervisor, to your investor, or to whomever. Why? What created that variance? And we'll get into some of those variances later on in the slides as well. But why do we have that variance and what happened?
Even it boils down to like leasing. Some people use certain property management software, and because of QuickBooks Online and because of RSA, like RSA used to have ability where they manage your leases, but it was a little bit hard. Now they kind of give you full control of putting everything in, and then they send the leases to you. it kind of is cheaper using RSA than using a lot of these management tools. I have friends and family who use like they use the Property Shark version of
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it. It's eluding me right now. But they'll pay, what is it, $10 a unit for stuff like that. But there are other tools that you can use, multiple tools that could get you the same services for a little bit cheaper. It takes a little bit, you know.
No, of course. No, it definitely does. So, and Mr. Granham, we'll get to your question too. And then he brought up a good question that I want to get to. So here's just a couple skills that are needed, right? And we spoke about that. We just spoke about it before. Budgeting, cash flow, and expenses, right? You should have an understanding of what a budget is, even as a real estate agent, right? Because sometimes as a real estate agent, I know plenty of real estate agents that you sell a multifamily to someone, and now they have this multifamily, and they give you the other listing to rent out the other stuff. And now, hey, I don't have anybody to manage the property, right? And now a real estate agent falls into the aspect of being a property manager. Always happens. Understanding that budget is going to be something so important, right? Understanding market conditions and the economy. I think real estate professionals have a good beat on what's happening. So if you live in Crown Heights, you should understand the average price per square foot in Crown Heights, whether that's residential, whether that's commercial. You should understand if there are any big coming attractions, if there's any big targets or anything like that, that's going to make that area more of a draw, right? You should be able to communicate effectively. It kills me when people, so it's interesting, right? Because we have even more technology nowadays, but people still don't communicate effectively, right? It is interesting. And I mean, effective communication. And most of the time, most business deals are done via text, things like that. But just communicate effectively. So if you have a meeting, make sure that you schedule that meeting. Make sure you let Joe know what time that meeting is. And maybe the day before, or the night before, or the morning of, follow up. Hey, Joe, looking forward to seeing you at blase time, right? Communication skills is going to be effective. And I think that, even in personal relationships, communication is one of those tools that you'll never be able to perfect. But as long as you're working on it on a daily basis, you're doing good. Number 4, tenant relationship, people skills. I think that's the nucleus of everything, right? I'm not saying you have to be a bubbly, people person and you have to walk down the street skipping, but if you're a property manager, you should at least like people, or like to be around them, or at least like to talk to them, right?
Not scared of answering a door.
Say that again?
Not as scared of answering a door, because you're going to have to knock a lot of doors, ring a lot of, depending on 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night, you have to be not afraid to answer the door. Because I've told a lot of tenants, hey, if there's a leak coming down in the middle of the night, it doesn't matter. I could have the fire department kick in your door. I mean, I have to pay for a new door, but I have the ability to do that. Like, if you're in there, I'm gonna knock until you answer the door, because it's an emergency, and people don't realize.
Exactly.
Yeah, people don't realize emergencies trump anything. Like, the cops are not gonna be upset. Like, well, they had an emergency. Fire department kicked in your door. This happens, and people don't realize that emergencies are, it circumvent anything. Like, you could be like, your kids could be there by themselves. Like, if it's an emergency and no one's answering the door, you don't know who needs help on the other side.
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, you bring up a good point. Also, maintenance and construction knowledge. So not to say that anyone needs to be a construction guru, right, or a construction expert, and for me, it was when I knew that I needed to take construction classes. It was years ago when I ended up doing it, when I was managing a residential property, had a boiler guy, something was happening on our boiler vendor comes out. He's like, yeah, Ty, man, boiler looks bad. That's going to be about, $4,000 or $5,000. So I said, all right, cool. So I wrote the work order, replaced it. Then at the end of the month, I took the report back to the owner, and the owner said, are you crazy? That wasn't a $4,000 or $5,000 job. And I'm sitting there looking crazy. So ever since I cost that owner $4,000 or $5,000, I made a promise to myself. I said, I will never, ever be in that situation again. And that's when I started taking more construction classes, so I can know how to drain a boiler. And then after I bought my own home, it became even more, right? How to drain the boiler, how to do certain things, what to look for, cracks, all of that stuff. So nobody can come along and be like, yeah, your wing hum thingamabob needs to be replaced. That's going to be about 10 grand. And you're sitting there like, Okay.
Let me find out you changing tubes and blocking and plugging tubes and boilers now.
Listen, listen, listen. I'm not doing all that, but I definitely know my way, at least a little bit around a boiler and that sort of stuff, man. I'm telling you, that stuff will cost you money, and even now, right? As I have, as I have my own properties, it's everything is so. Just as a tip for everybody on here, and I'm not sure if they have it now, but Home Depot, and I used to go to the one in Bed-Stuy, right on right where Job Corps was near, what's that? That's Nostrum.
Yeah.
Yep. They had free Home Depot classes where they teach you how to like tile and they teach you how to do all this stuff. So after that experience, I was like, I will never get caught like that again. And I started going to these Home Depot classes, and they had this class where they even teach you, my first time, teach you how to take up the toilet, teach you how to lay down, everything. It was really good. I'm not sure if they still have those classes, but I would recommend, if you're a property manager, go. Even if you're not doing that stuff, at least you understand what it takes to do that. So nobody can come and say, yeah, that's going to be about, $3,000. And you're sitting there like, okay.
They need a new wax ring and a wax ring costs $10 and they told you, no, it's a $100 part. No, it's not.
No, it happens all the time.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. It happened to me. It happens all the time. So leasing and lease terms, right? So if you're a property manager, being familiar with leasing. Now, in residential, leases are more straightforward. There may be a year, 2 years. They may have some riders. So I know now in the last couple of years, Airbnb being prevalent, you had Airbnb riders in there, no sublease riders, smoking riders are in there. So understanding that. But on the commercial side, what kind of lease do you have? Is it a triple net, single net, double net? What type of lease is it? So understanding what that lease looks like is important too. Understand the vacancy, understanding your market, right? So if you're an agent in, downtown Brooklyn, what's happening there? What are the vacancy rates, right? Because that will help you market your unit. I remember a couple years ago, I rented an apartment, and this was on the corner. This was like Nostrand and Halsey, and I had an owner. She had a duplex, very nice. She's like, listen, I want to list this unit at, she said like 3,400. I was like, what? I was like, no. She said, we can do it. I was like, I don't know, and I was kind of fading out of brokerage at that time, but she was a good friend of mine. So I said, all right, that's what we're going to do, right? So instead of listing at 3,400, we listed the property at 29, because I didn't want to go with $3,000, right? Because just the look of that, people are like, I'm not renting anything for $3 nothing in Bed-Stuy, still Bed-Stuy, blah, blah, blah. So we listed it at 29.50. And do you know, I got that apartment rented in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Yep, 2 weeks. And those tenants are actually still there. So, understanding the market and understanding what's happening is going to be important. Now, could you get 2,900 somewhere else? Maybe not. Even in Bed-Stuy, there's even within a neighborhood, there's certain areas within that neighborhood that you may not even be able to do that either. So just understanding that. Risk management and life safety. So I think that's important. Just mitigating risk at your property. Somebody's always falling. In New York, you look at somebody the wrong way, they're trying to sue, right? So understanding that you have your insurance policies together. If you have renters, you should encourage them. And in most of the leases, they should have a renter's insurance policy. Even though all the times that I've rented, I've never had one, and no landlord even pursues it. But just in case, they should have it.
Yep, that's a must, right?
Just in case they should have it. So
cameras.
Yeah. So before we get to the other stuff, and we'll save it for later, we have a couple minutes. I do want to open the floor up to questions. So if anyone has any questions for Darnell,
shadow time. We have
that again.
Yeah, we have some questions here. How much shadow time old manager before new manager?
Okay. Hold on. Let's go back to. All right. Let's go back to that. All right, shadow times. I think that's the questions. Well, let's go back to what Mr. Granum said. What is the best platform to use for residential rent collections? And do you recommend automated utility payments, or do you analyze bills monthly? So I know I have an answer to that, but I'll let you take it first.
Okay, I don't see that one. I think he sent that directly to you.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. So he sent it to me, so I'll answer it. So for me, the platform that I use right now, I use what's called VersaPay. And VersaPay is pretty good and it's pretty user friendly, and I really like it. It's something that I've been using now for about 3-4 months. The cost is good. I can't complain. Now, automated utility bills, I am totally against automating utility bills all the time. I don't even automate my personal bills. And now for properties, the reason why I don't is because I'm always analyzing the bills because we deal with these. So you can get double billed, usage varies. So I always like, and then again, I think that's an aspect of understanding your property and understanding the bills that your property incurs. So to answer your question, I always analyze my bills. And then the cool thing about VersaPay, and I use Avid as well. That's where our bills come into Avid, and then we can look at it. And I always analyze my bills, and they have a dispute folder. So if it's something that I don't like, I will put it in the dispute folder and it will hold it there. And then I can contact the utility company, which is a contact us at, coned.com. And I will try to drill down on why this bill looks like, why it looks like it, why it looks the way it does. And until I get a firm answer, I will keep that bill disputed. So I don't automate any utility bills. I look over every single utility bills that comes in, and I manage about 8 to 10 assets. So on a month, I'm looking at over 100 utility bills. Some are large, some are small, but I analyze every single one. And the platform that I use is Avid and VersaPay.
Yeah, I use QuickBooks. QuickBooks does it. The QuickBooks Online specifically. QuickBooks Desktop, it doesn't help because you're stuck on one computer. QuickBooks Online is kind of versatile on any computer. It doesn't deal with leases. It does with pretty much a lot of the accounting side of it, paying bills, sending out leases via mail, stuff like that.
Gotcha. So I'll send this one to you. So Marcia is always with the good question. I like having Marcia around. Her question is, how much shadow time with the old manager before the new one takes over?
I would say anywhere from 3 to 6 months. When I saw the question, I was gonna say 3 to 6 months, but ideally I would say around the winter time, because that's when most people are home. That should be the transition period, because summertime it's usually dead in the summertime. But the winter months when the boiler just getting kicked on, around that October, November, December, that's a perfect time for a transition between an old manager and a new manager for sure.
Very good point. No, very good point. And really quickly, before the other questions, everyone who is still on, and if you want your continuing education credits, please give me your full name, your brokerage firm, and your real estate license number. Make sure you send that over. Leave it in the chat, leave it somewhere. All right. So moving on to another question. This is Marcia again. I'll leave this one to you, Darnell. Are all the different facets done by the property manager, or property manager oversees someone else who does it?
Depends on the budget. I'm sure that's how I would say. It depends on the budget. I've been involved in changing toilets, changing outlets, changing lights, changing front doors, changing cabinets. If there's a need to do it right then and there, I will go to my truck and get my drill and take care of it right then and there. If I have to oversee someone to do it, then and the tenant could wait, I'll schedule a time for them to get something done. But if I know that I can do it and save the management company a few $100s, or myself a few $100s, I'm going to do it myself. It just depends on your time management.
Yeah. And I would also say too, depends on your staff. So Marcia, to answer your question, if you have a superimporter in the building, your superimporter should be doing that as well. And we'll talk about that later, right? But that's the dynamic too. So if you're a property manager, sometimes it may be, if you're managing smaller units, cool, right? Get out, like for me, I always carry around some tools in my car. I do the same. I even carry around a mop and a broom, because if I come across something, I keep it in my trunk. If I come across something that needs to be mopped, swept, guess what? I'll do it. I'm not gonna leave it that way. Like I was walking my roof. I was walking one of my roofs the other day, and there was just debris there. So guess what? I swept the debris off, and I don't have to do it. And I'm walking around the roof, and I'm in a suit and tie and shirt, but I'm climbing up ladders and jumping up stuff and climbing through, climbing under stuff. So I think if you have supers and porters, nothing should come to you because your supers and your porters should be the one to take care of some of those nuances while you are more paying bills, issuing contracts and doing things of that nature. But it also depends on the structure of your property management company and how things are going. So
yeah, you should be on the you should be definitely on the macro side, but you also, like, just like you were saying before, you should also understand what they're doing, exactly what they're doing. Like, okay, they have to change the cylinder. Okay, how much time is that going to take? Okay, that should take them about 10 minutes, depending on how bad the cylinder is. You should have an idea, not to say you need to know accounting or anything, but you should have a light brushstroke on every industry.
I agree.
Just in case they tend to ask you a question about, well, why is it that my my HRA checks are not being applied for this month opposed to last month? You need to have that. You need to have that.
Oh, that's a classic question. I used to hear that all the time. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Question from Teresa, which is actually and I think with everything that's been happening, Teresa poses a really interesting question. I remember this was maybe 2 years ago, a sad story. And now there was a point in time where I think, and Marcia, I think it's the National Real Estate for the National Realtors Association. They had a program where they were informing women how to be safe in their job. So Teresa's question, Teresa Smith, is how safe is it for women to be a property manager? And I would say that for me, from what I see in my company at RPI, I think we have more women who are property managers, but I think it's different, right? It's more commercial. So it's more work being on the leasing side. They visit their properties, once a week. They, drive around in the car. It's more commercial, so it's a little different. Now, when you get into residential, right, and you're in buildings, in affordable housing, in buildings and rough areas, whatever, I think it does become a safety concern. But I think, Teresa, you have to look at what the assets are that you're managing, right? And I think with anybody, right? I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'3", about 220, right? I don't want to go walk into certain buildings either. I don't want nobody to kidnap me, right? So I think it's important, right, to think about your safety no matter what you're doing. But is it safe for women? Yeah, I would say property management is safe for women as a whole. I just think it depends on what type of properties you're managing. Some could say the same thing about being a real estate agent as a woman, right? And it was a big scare, right? You're going to open homes, you have an open house, right, that you just marketed to the wide world. And anybody comes rolling up, they sign a name, they sign your book, and that's it, right? And you can be there alone with somebody. So, I think in real estate, in any business that you're interacting with people and with the possibility of being alone with someone for a certain amount of time is always a cause for concern as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. My broker had an issue a couple of weeks ago. And she always was the one that just very stern, walking around places, and she had an issue, and she was like, you know what, when I'm showing these apartments now, I'm just gonna have someone with me. And she took that upon herself after experiencing stuff, but at the same time, no one knows what the other person walking through that door is going through and what they're liable to do, because as a real estate as an agent, I can be showing a house and a woman comes in and say I sexually assaulted her while I'm in the house with her alone. It's my word against her word, So some people have to put that in that like another person around, because like you said, you never know who walks through the door. That could be somebody running from. So we had an issue a year ago in our office. Somebody was running from a shootout and runs into our office bleeding.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it just so happens that we used to leave the door unlocked. But after that happened, we were just like, okay, well, we can have a buzzer now. You're not going to be able to get through the office. You're not going to be able to get through the office because of what happened that time. Like, people never know what happens. Like, we're all like open and have a relaxed mindset, but anything is liable to happen.
But I think now COVID has ramped up safety concerns, right? So for example, now, I don't think any real estate brokerage in the city now you can just waltz into, right? You have to be buzzed in, right? And I don't think that was a safety concern. That was more of a health concern, right? Because you can have COVID and we don't want you just walking into our spaces. So now you have to buzz, you have to get your temperature taken, you have to write down your name for contract tracing. So I think those things have kind of beefed up security. And then again, I think those are elements that are not going to go away, right? And I think even in property management, so now the dynamics of property management has changed because when you're walking into a building, so I walked into, so I was in Boston and I had to go to a federal building to do something with court for one of the properties. And they kind of go through the gamut, right? They take the temperature, you have to write your name down, you know, show your ID and still, but now, you know, stuff is ramped up. So I think implementing that on the property management when you're on site, letting someone know, being on site with someone from your company, maybe take your super, maybe take your porter, right? Someone that you're familiar with when you go around to these different tenants suites as well. So I think that that's important. Any other questions from anyone? I know we're a little over. Any other questions, property management related for myself or for Darnell?
Did we answer any of the 3D walkthrough questions? If there is any 3D walkthrough questions.
Okay, let me scroll back up.
Okay, I see the 1,000 square feet. That's roughly about about 230, depending on what else you want from it. If you want like pictures of the front of the building, floor plans, but I would say about 230. And like I said, it really when it comes to a lot of these large scale brokerage firms, I'm willing to have some kind of retainer. Say if you're doing 5 listings a week or 5 listings a month, and you just can't handle it. If I'm able to get those 5 listings as well as other, we could come to some agreement. I'm willing to work with anybody.
Agreed.
And even like in your case, Kai, I was like, hey, let me just scan this property and let's see what happens. Because you know, sometimes you never know what you find by scanning a property and then realizing like, oh, in the boiler room, I didn't know that pipe was hanging down here. So a lot of people are using 3D scans to use as like property maintenance in a sense, or tell somebody how to go somewhere. Because now you're trying to say how Ty, you never been to a property, but you manage that property, but you don't remember exactly because you're managing 15, 20 properties. You can now go in your 3D walkthrough and tell somebody, all right, walk down the corridor, make a left, make a right, a little bit here, there's gonna be something, but you can now walk through it with that 3D walkthrough and understand where they're going or what to address.
Yeah, so my good friend Marcia, she put so she's an independent broker. So what's the relationship there? Do you work with how do you work with independent brokers?
I do it through my company, Dream Overture. I work with independent. I work with anybody. There's no conflict of interest because at the end of the day, we're all in this. Even though we're in the same field, we're not in competition for the same property. It's different properties. So
Gotcha.
I have the luxury of being able to scan any property. And like I said, there's really no conflict of interest. It's not like we're competing for one land. Like my broker is competing for the same landlord as you are. So it's not an issue. I've never come across some situation like that.
Gotcha. Now, how does this work? And thank you, Teresa. Can the price of your services be charged to the seller? But does that already happen in the commission? Like, how does that like?
So you can. I've had brokers do that. You can have the seller or the owner or the landlord pay for it. The only issue is it depends on if they know the square footage. Like a lot of people think, oh well, it's 1,000 square foot property, and then when I scan it, I'm like, oh, it was actually 1,500. The price had to change. Okay. So you can have you could have the agent. I mean, you could have the seller or the landlord contact me and schedule it through me, or you could just be the go-between between that, where I could send you the invoice and you could forward it to them and stuff like that. But typically, it's hard to get an exact square footage of any particular property because people don't really know. Are they counting the closets? Did they count the bathroom? You know. And like I said, with apartment buildings, it works out because say you have multiple apartments that have the same exact layout. Mm-hmm. If I scan the top floor, I don't have to charge you the same exact price as I'm doing the other floors because I could just copy that link. Depending on when it's being done, I can copy that link. Or I could just rebrand it. I could rebrand it in a way for that particular property.
Perfect, perfect, no problem. All right, perfect. So we don't have any more questions. Darnell, I would ask you to give us some parting words. Thank you for joining us. And if there's anything that you want to leave the attendees with, please tell us, or how can we reach you, or any parting words?
Well, Marcia, you reach out to me at darnell@dreamoverture.com.
Make sure you put your contact information in the chat as well for everybody to have.
Yes, I think I did, but I'll do it again. Well, I think, no, it's not doing what I wanted to do. Hold on a second. Copy. Hold on, trying to put everything in the chat. Give me a second.
Yeah, and I'll just go over why you're doing that. All right. So everyone, please, you know, if you are, again, I'll say it again, if you are a real estate agent, make sure you give me your firm name and your license number. And tomorrow we will be on at the same time. We will have another guest speaker, and in for that. So with that being said, Darnell, take us away.
So I would say, you know, property management is a rewarding job. You will see the good, the bad, and the ugly of humankind. Don't make the ugly side of it deter you in realizing that there are a lot of bright spots in the property management side. You'll meet a lot of different people. You'll network a lot. You may even find your next job from a tenant. It just so happens through conversation. And you'll be surprised who has done this job just like you're doing. And just because it's hasn't been done doesn't mean that you can't reinvent something. Because people are trying different things, and COVID has shown us that we have to be versatile and we have to adapt. And property management is full of adapting. And that's all I have for you. Be safe, stay healthy, and see you in, you know, see you guys out there on the selling.
Yep, and possibly in for purpose, because that's where you can catch me on the weekends.
Yes, 1489 Fulton Street between Kingston and Tompkins. We are a 2-floor establishment. We do catering inside and outside. We have indoor seating up to 54. We have outdoor seating.
And have the best pina coladas ever.
Pina colada, rum punch, ginger sorrel, and margarita.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, and I will see everyone tomorrow. If you have any questions for anyone, please email me. I will leave my email address here. So if you have any questions about anything, let me see. Everyone, please email me. My email is taiwananthony@gmail.com. If you have any questions, shoot me a quick email. I will respond. Maybe not tonight. I am going to. Maybe I might go to Full Purpose. Maybe I might go to Full Purpose and get that rum punch.
Bring the family, man. Bring the family. Family time.
Perfect. So, all right, everyone, take care, and I will see everyone tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Darnell. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
No problem. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. You too. See you tomorrow.
Okay, see you.